I screw it up? You have questions, we have answers. Today, we open up our mailbag and talk about the Nashville Predators defense, leadership, and that dangerous thing called hope.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome back to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this Monday episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders community and, of course, our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio and friends. I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Emma Lingan, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
You are the Thelma to my Hockey Louise. Like, how lost would I be without you?
Likewise.
I mean, yeah. So a lot to dive into. So last week we sent out the call. Hey, let us know what you want, what questions you have. We're going to do a mailbag episode, and you all answered. So we may do 2 mailbag episodes. Today, we pulled some questions. We are going to talk about the Nashville Predators defense. That is a whole topic. We are going to be talking about leadership, which was an issue last season. And we're going to be talking about that very dangerous thing called hockey hope, Emma. Before we dive into all of that, I do want to just say, I'm really, really sad and sorry for perhaps Luke Evangelista and perhaps Zachary Leroux, because if some of you missed this, Bonnaroo got canceled. Our cool Bonnaroo buddies ended up having to just turn around and leave. Can you believe that? I was like, it had to be
Bonnaroo buddies.
Bad there.
Bonnaroo buddies. That's fun.
Bonnaroo buddies.
Yeah, no, it was unfortunate. I think with the weather and but at the same time, though, maybe this is just me being old and not liking large crowds of people. But I'm like, being there in the mud, I'm like, that just sounds unpleasant. So
no, thank you. It's just not for us. No. Emma and I, we weren't there. We didn't have to turn around. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh, Luke Evangelista and Zachary Leroux, who quite frankly may not even know anything about Bonnaroo. Got canceled. So now we put out the word like, hey, who has a question? There's so many questions, Emma, so many existential questions when it comes to the Nashville Predators. And we got so many great responses. So we're going to just dive into the mailbag and start answering our questions. And we're just jumping into the jingweeds with this one. So this is from one of our insiders who in-house, currently on the roster, should be paired next season with Jeremy Lauzon. Favorite options are Andreas Englund, Spencer Stasny, maybe Mark Del Gaizo if he stays. And then this insider said, do you like one of them, or are you going to give Emma a mini stroke and say Justin Barron? And I thought, you can bet I'm going to say Justin Barron.
I honestly, if we're just talking in-house, I'd put him with Roman Josi. Quite honestly.
You'd put Lauzon with Josi.
Yeah. I mean, that's where he was playing before he got injured. Again, I think the preferred option would be bring in someone else. But I mean, I don't like of the options that they have, which are not many.
No.
Not many. Mm-mm. I would put him with Josi because I think that he is more of that kind of traditional stay-at-home defenseman, kind of lets Josi roam around and do his thing that he does so well. Mm-hmm. I didn't hate that. I'm not saying like I love that pairing. Again, need to reiterate that the correct answer here is go get another defenseman. But I think that of the options that are there, I'd put him with Josi again.
Yeah, that's a really, what's funny is it didn't even cross my mind because in my mind, I'm like, Barry Trotz, the one thing you have to be sure you do this offseason is get somebody for Josi. But I actually like that because you want that traditional prototypical defenseman with Roman Josi and then just let Josi roam free. And that basically is what Lauzon is. Now, I will say this. Even though we didn't see him but just a smidge last season, I still have in my mind some moments where he would come and kind of like pinch down low and then the Predators would get burned. And so I think like that's one of those things where I'm like, okay, you just have to remind whoever is with Josi, like, don't do that. Don't do that. I do think here is one, and we don't talk about this particular defenseman very often, and we haven't seen him in Nashville yet. So that's fine. I think about somebody like Andrew Gibson. I think he could be very interesting. His training camp last season, he and Tanner Molendyk, their training camps last season were top tier training camps. And of course, neither one of them cracked the roster, but I think in a pinch, they maybe could have. And I'm very curious to see how Barry Trotz what he decides to do with them early in the season after training camp. But I think about somebody like Andrew Gibson. If you put him with somebody like Jeremy Lauzon, I mean, that is a lot of two defensemen playing very defensively. Gibson's like 6'3", he's over 200 pounds. Jeremy Lauzon, we know, is a big, strong, like physical presence. Lauzon, I think, plays a little bit bigger than he is physically. He's not like Luke Shen size, but he plays big. And I'm like, that would be an interesting, strictly, mostly defensive pairing. So when we talk about the defense, of course, we think of Andreas Englund. We just have to consider that Justin Barron is a project that they seem to really love, and they want to figure that out despite Emma's medical status. But I think you forget, like, what are we going to do about Molendyk and Gibson? And what are they going to do about Mark Del Gaizo, patron saint of our podcast, Spencer Stasny? There are so many decisions to make, veteran-wise, young players coming up-wise. I don't know. Until they get the Josi piece, I just cannot figure out quite how this is going to sift out in a way that is going to make Nashville's defense jump off of the page and go, okay, this may work. I just don't see the pieces there yet.
Yeah, that's why it's so hard to answer this question of, with the parameters of who's currently on the roster, because I just think that, and it's so weird. It's like, this is not what we're used to with the Predators. It's always like, defense, got it. That's covered. It's where are you going to get the scoring from? And now we don't know either of those things. And it's the
So
joy
fun.
of the unknown. It's so fun. Endless possibilities, maybe. But I think that, the answer is in the question, which is like, you cannot roll out what you currently have on your roster. No. It's not going to work.
Yeah. And if we learned anything from last season when it comes to the defense, it's that you can go out and get a good player, for instance, a Brady Shea, but if he is not utilized well or gets comfortable with the system that the coach is using him in, it could backfire. I mean, we know that. We saw that happen. Now, I feel like Shea is going to come into training camp a very different player this season. I think we're going to see a very different Brady Shea. And I think that's, one of the positive things coming out of a really tough defensive season last year. But there's a lot of factors that go into how this is going to work. Who is Trotz going to be able to get? And then how is Andrew Brunette going to utilize them? And those are two questions that I don't know that we have a great answer to yet.
Yeah, it's we don't, and that's why this off season is going to be very, very important.
Yes. Coming up, we are going to wrestle with the leadership question. If Roman Josi were not the captain, who should be? We'll talk about that coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and had this moment wondering where all your money went? Whether it is dining out, online shopping, or entertainment, it is so easy to lose track of our finances. But that is where Monarch Money comes in. It is your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just another budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, and all of your spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Monarch Money is a great tool for young adults just starting out, and it also makes financial collaboration easier. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts. You can set goals together and stay on the same page without the extra stress. So take control over your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, Emma, we are answering mailbag questions and a lot of existential questions to wrestle with. So here is one from our insiders. If Roman Josi were not the captain, who do you think would be the most likely candidate on the current Predators roster? And leadership is going to be a big topic going into this season because, of course, Barry Trotz, was very open, very stream of consciousness in his end of the season presser and talked about there was this leadership paralysis in the locker room. Look, Roman Josi, he is your captain. But Emma, who, when you look at the roster, is a candidate whose leadership you say that's somebody who could step in if Josi were not the captain?
So I kind of have two different answers for this one. One would be based on strictly who I think is from a leadership standpoint and those leadership qualities, who would be the most obvious choice. To me, that's Ryan O'Reilly.
Yes.
However, if we're talking about, the captaincy, a lot of times has to do with, who is sort of the franchise, the face of the franchise, someone that they've committed to be the person long term that's, going to carry this, that they've built around and carry this team forward. That is Filip Forsberg. So I think that, O'Reilly has maybe more of the leadership qualities that I would look for, but again, he's not really, I would say, a core piece in the sense that he isn't a homegrown talent who, is someone that they've committed to long term financially and just really invested in. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah. I think if Ryan O'Reilly had signed here maybe 4 seasons ago, it would feel a little bit different because I do think there are different things you look at when you were talking about the captaincy. I think what you said, the leadership skills. And when you talk to the younger players, the name that comes up of the person that they watch is Ryan O'Reilly. I mean, just across the board. And you can see that. Now, here, of course, Emma and I will tell you the hitch in that Ryan O'Reilly giddy up is, could he hold is there space in his heart for accountability for others, or will he set himself on fire before he has to talk?
It's the age-old question,
Yeah, can he be as outward focused when it comes to accountability as he is inwardly focused? Because friends, it is a level to which I've never seen or heard another athlete or person with as anvil-like personal accountability. It's Ryan O'Reilly. It's a phenomenon. Yeah. The other thing, though, I do think that you're right. There is a tenure portion of that where you want somebody who, and I hate to even use the phrase, knows the Predator way. I know that's how I feel about that. But you know what I'm talking about. You all know what I'm talking about. How the franchise operates, how the franchise wants things done. This is a person who's not going to come in and rock the boat. And here is the sleeper pick for me. And I agree with you about Filip Forsberg, Colton Sissons. And he's not a face of the franchise guy like Filip Forsberg is by any stretch of the imagination. He's not necessarily considered the superstar or a superstar, but he's a homegrown guy who understands the culture. He also, and you've talked about this, Emma, you and he are very similar, like straight shooters. Like he says the things. And that is a part of the captaincy that I think if you don't naturally have the ability to do that, that's the hardest skill to develop is you have to be able to say hard things and not be emotional about it and not be a jerk about it, but just speak the truth when the truth maybe is uncomfortable. And I do think Colton Sissons does that so well. He's one of my favorite post-game people to talk to because he is a straight shooter. He's not working hard to fit what he has to say into the lingo or he doesn't spin it. Like he just says the things. And so I think there is an element of that I think is such an underrated skill and a really, really hard one. As somebody who grew up trying to be nice, I struggle with that. Colton Sissons is delightful and nice, but he says the things. And I think there's something to be said for Colton Sissons.
Yeah, but again, if we're talking about the Predator way is to not say the things, if we're being honest. So it's like I hear what you're saying. I would love Colton Sissons, in that scenario, but I'm just thinking about like more realistic.
Yeah.
Realistically, I think if Roman Josi was out of the picture, it would be Filip Forsberg would be the captain and O'Reilly and Sissons would be the alternate captains.
Yeah.
Maybe Stamkos too, but yeah.
Here's the hitch in my giddy up with Steven Stamkos, because I think most people would say, well, it would be Stamkos because he was a captain in Tampa Bay all this time. It's because he was a captain in Tampa Bay all this time. And I think the first year, like this is not a player who settled in right away. I don't know, and we'll know more about this next season, where he is at in his embracing being a Nashville Predator. And I'm not implying by any stretch that he was like, I'm just here because I have to, but there is an element of emotional investment. And I don't know that he was capable, the way his situation went, of being super emotionally invested in his first season. Great voice in the leadership group. Don't think you want to bring the captain from another team with a very different recent history of success into the Nashville Predators locker room and make it the voice. Because you got to read the room.
That's why I was saying alternate captain. I would not make him the captain. But here's like, again, for being honest, speaking of being straight shooters, we're talking about people who were not emotionally invested in the slightest when they got here from another team. Ryan McDonough did not want to be here. Never wanted to be here.
Professional. He was professional, but you did not have to speak it was not a hidden.
As someone who was working for the team at the time and saw a lot behind the scenes, put in absolutely zero effort to even pretend that he wanted to be there. And he was an alternate captain. Again, why? Because a lot of his experience was as a captain with the New York Rangers. And so it was kind of the same thing. And I was like, I even feel like Stamkos wanted to be here a little bit more than McDonough did, or if he doesn't, then he at least did a better job at faking it. I don't know.
When you look at the young guys in the locker room, and I think we've touched on this before, but I'm just curious if anything's changed over the course of the season. Do you look at any of the younger players and go, I could see that one growing into a leadership role as a captain? It's so hard when they're young sprouts, but
they're so young. I
like little bitty sprouts.
Honestly, like, not really. That's a little concerning that no one really jumps out at me. I think, again, if I go the Filip Forsberg logic again of like who's someone that is like a homegrown guy that they may want to build around, I would say maybe Luke Evangelista, but I mean, he was a captain in London. So I mean, he has the experience. And like, to me, of that sort of young wave of players, he would be kind of like, that's who I would pick. But even then, it's not a slam dunk. Like, yes, absolutely, there's your captain. You know.
I wonder with the 5th overall pick, and of course there's an element of this regardless of down the road captaincy or anything like that, but that I think is something that you look for with this 5th overall pick. And it's not a guarantee. Nothing is a guarantee in the draft. But if you're picking somebody 5th overall, you are expecting them to be a cornerstone of something the Predators are building. And I think probably in their conversations with them, they talk about and want to know about leadership and conflict resolution and speaking and their voice in the locker room and all of that, because there is almost an expectation that if you are going to be the guy on the ice, you've got to be the guy in the locker room. And I think it's really hard. And we saw this season when you are not able to be the guy on the ice, you almost don't use your voice in the locker room. Ryan O'Reilly talked about that. He said, look, when I'm not playing well, it's really hard to come into this locker room and call somebody else out. And when nobody's playing well, it's just crickets. So it's just an interesting piece looking forward, going ahead with this 5th overall pick. I think that's something they'll have in mind. Coming up, we are going to dabble in that dangerous water we call a hockey hope. All right, Emma, we have reached into our mailbag. We are answering questions from our Locked On Predators insiders, from some of our everydayers. We got a lot of questions, so we're going to tackle those on another episode coming up tomorrow. But we're going to wrap up with this existential question from our insider, Jennifer. What are you most hopeful about for next season?
Oof, that's not, I mean... It depends on your definition of hope, I guess. It's like, wow, I really hope this happens, or do I actually think this will happen? And at this point, I really don't know. And so if I had to pick one thing, I would say I'm most hopeful that, and this is very broad, so maybe this is a cop-out answer, but I hope that this team finds some chemistry.
Yes.
And just kind of proves that last year was a one-off, kind of a we can, just flush it kind of year. I mean, not flush it in the sense that, last year was very bad and we want to remember how bad it was so that we don't repeat that.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think that I hope that they can prove that last year was not the norm.
Yeah.
And they can find some chemistry and work well together.
Yeah. It's so interesting you say that, because mine is along the exact same lines. For me, I hope there is some sort of cohesiveness. And I mean on the ice and I mean off the ice. But they're watching the Stanley Cup Finals, watching Florida, watching Edmonton, having watched the teams even going through the postseason. But especially in my mind, it's caught my attention so much with Edmonton and with Florida. These are two teams that play as a cohesive unit. And it is such a disparity to me to watch those teams and then remember what we saw in Nashville. And one of the things that we kept hearing in post-game from players, they were talking about, we aren't playing as a 5-man unit. We aren't playing as a 5-man unit. We aren't playing as a 5-man unit. And then there's a part of me that's like, if you know that's the problem, fix the problem. But it's also more than like fixing the X's and O's. It's line chemistry, and it's learning each other, and it's trusting each other. And so it's kind of these nebulous things that come when you have a little bit of success. And when Nashville did not let's just be honest, they really did not have chunks of success enough to build that trust and to build that cohesiveness. So as I watch the Stanley Cup Finals, I look at and remember back to what Nashville looked like. And I'm like, I want it to look different than that. I want that cohesiveness. Lose the games, okay, but look like you are playing as a team. And I don't know how to describe it any more than that. It's like that thing, like, you'll know it when you see it. Like, you know what I'm talking about? When it comes to individual players, Emma, is there anybody that you are like, this is the player I really hope we're going to see something different from or something new from? Is there a player that you're like, I have some hope about this?
Again, not a short list. I'll
Anybody.
Anyone. Yes. Well, so this is a hard one because, again, we know that I am an apologist for this man, and I I think that he took way too much heat this year. But UC Saros is
Let's
one.
go.
I'm not like, again, I have zero concerns about this last year for him and what that means about him and, his longevity in this franchise. But for me, it's more of like, okay, I know that he was not the problem this year. And I want other people to realize that. And so I think that that's one. The other one you kind of touched on it earlier is Brady Shea, because I think that he took a lot of the heat. And quite honestly, he deserved some of it. Like early on, he looked pretty rough. But again, as someone who has watched Brady Shea for years before he came here, I know that he's capable of much more, and so I just hope we see that from him.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think, and like you said, really, when you look at this roster, Filip Forsberg had a pretty good season, but it's lost in the fact that he was coming off of a record-setting season and then lost in the chaos that was everything else. But there's not a player that I'm not excited to see play better. There's not a player that I'm like, man, that was their best last season and it's not good enough. Like, I don't know that there are a ton of those players on this roster. So I have hope that individual performances are going to be better. But the thing that I am most hopeful for is that Nashville came into last season after those free agent signings, and it was so much talk and expectations and all of that. And it looked like chaos. It just looked like chaos on the ice. It felt a little chaotic, like not chaotic in the locker room, but you knew they liked each other. You knew they were battling, but they couldn't break through. And I just am so hopeful we don't have that. I don't know that I necessarily think that, again, we talked about it with the Central Division. I don't necessarily think they're going to like rocket to the top, but it just needs to look and feel better. Yeah, it just needs to look and feel better. Also, I want to watch hockey games this season where when they go down early by a goal, I don't go, okay, well, now we just have to endure the next 58 minutes because
Yes.
we know they can't come back.
Even like was it game 4 of the Stanley Cup final where Florida took a 3-0 lead?
Come on.
I was so used to watching Predators hockey that I was like, well, there you go. And then Edmonton comes back and wins it. And then they came back. It looked like they were going to win it. And then Florida tied it. And then they went to overtime and Edmonton still ended up winning. So at that point, I was like, did we really need the overtime? It's the same result. But either way, it was like, wow, I'm so used to watching the Predators that I was just like, well, there you go.
You have that moment of like, they don't despair.
Yeah, it's like, wow.
They're like, no, we're still playing. This game is not over. And I think Nashville at times just played like somebody had kicked their puppy for too much of the game after they went down. So I'm hopeful for resiliency. I'm hopeful for cohesiveness. I mean, individual performances, I think just across the board are going to improve. Now, are they going to improve enough that Nashville becomes this juggernaut? I mean, we'll see. This season, Emma, I got to tell you, when it comes down to like recording an episode on like, what are your predictions for the Predators this season? I might call in sick. It's like all Emma for 30 minutes because Anne's too much of a chicken.
Oh, you don't want that either from me. I'll be like, I don't know. I mean,
I know.
like,
Yeah.
after like last season scarred us so much, I think that we're like paralyzed and we don't want to make predictions because we're like, remember when we had hope last year and we dared to and now I worry that like there's been enough time has passed that we've healed a little bit from it, that
that's
we're like,
terrible.
we might dare to have hope again. And then it's like, no,
Careful.
it's yeah. Oof. It's
Careful,
rough.
careful, people. And it's so interesting because, between the two of us, we've covered a lot of seasons of hockey teams. We've watched a lot of sports. Like, I was the girl that was overly invested in the Buffalo Bills 4 Super Bowls in a row and cried in the bathroom 4 times. Like, I've been through the valley of the shadow of death. with the Buffalo Bills. And I'm like, please, I don't know that I can come out the other side okay. But as much as like we've been around, like last season was it was such a whole thing. If you were a Nashville Predators fan and you were like, I don't know what just happened, nobody, like, you were not alone. You are not alone. This is not just a podcast, it's a support group for what the flag nog was that for 84 years.
Trauma bonding. That's what this is. Trauma bonding.
It was. It was. Oh gosh. So those are our questions from the mailbag for today. Tune in tomorrow. We are reaching back in the mailbag because you all had some great questions, and Emma and I are going to work on our healing. We're going to do some, like, what is that? A sound bath. And, we're going to cleanse.
Lovely.
I know we're going to like sage our offices, and then we're going to come back and answer some more questions on tomorrow's episode. So make sure you tune in for that. We'd also love to know your thoughts. What do you think is going to work well for the defense, and what are you hopeful about for next season? Let us know in the comments of our YouTube video, or you can always find the podcast on social media at LO_Predators. Before we log off on our Monday, Emma, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
Yes, you can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work at the Hockey News, and you can find me, like you said, saging my office, maybe saging the locker room at Bridgestone Arena, something to just reverse this juju.
This is how Emma and I are going to literally become partners in crime. We're going to be arrested for breaking into Bridgestone Arena with sage.
All for a good cause,
We're doing what we can, friends. We're doing what we can. You can find me on social media at @NK_Mama on Ice. You can find me not doing dirty laundry from Bonnaroo because I did not go to that hot, muddy mess. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that's going to do it for our Monday episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We're going to be back tomorrow answering more mailbag questions. We'll see you then.